I was at my best friend's wedding, watching them exchange rings and kiss on the altar. I felt a knot of emotions I couldn't quite name. Happiness for my friend, sure, but also a flicker of envy I wouldn't admit out loud. After a few rounds of champagne, a buddy of mine, Matt, nudged me with his elbow, a sly grin on his face. So feeling the heat. When are you and Veronica finally tying the knot? I've had your wedding gift picked out for year, man. Veronica, my girlfriend, was sitting right next to me. Makeup perfect, looking like she'd stepped out of magazine. The kind of woman who turns heads. The kind of woman you're proud to have on your arm. We've been together for 3 years. Everyone in our circle saw us as the golden couple. Marriage felt like the natural next step. The inevitable conclusion. Hearing Matt's teasing, I reflexively glanced at the newlyweds on the stage and answered with an easy smile. Soon, probably in the next month or two. The words were barely out of my mouth when another voice cut in, sharp with hesitation and a clear cold resistance. No, it was Veronica. My voice died in my throat. It felt like someone hit the mute button. On our entire table, the smiles on our friends' faces froze. They looked from me to Veronica, and the vibe went from festive to funeral. Level awkward. In a split second, I turned to look at her. She was already staring at me, and the look in her eyes sent a chill straight to my core. There was no shared intimacy, no bashful coyness you'd expect from a couple being ribbed about marriage. There was only resentment, a silent accusation. It was as if I hadn't just mentioned our future, but had said something deeply offensive, something utterly ridiculous. Her perfect brows knitted together beneath the table. Her fingers dug into my arm, a sharp, painful pinch. Her voice was a low hiss, but every word was laced with ice. Ethan, do you get some kind of sick thrill out of putting me on the spot like this? What the hell? How was I putting her on the spot? I was just playing along with a friend's joke, talking about a future I thought we both wanted. Our friends, seeing the disaster unfolding, immediately tried to smooth things over. Whoa, you two talk about being in sync. Totally. One's eager, the other plays it cool. The best things in life are worth waiting for, right? Drinks, everyone. Let's have a drink. The noise of the reception rushed back in, patching over the gaping hole of awkwardness. But for me, the party was over. The spot on my arm throbbed, a dull ache that echoed the confusion, churning in my gut. What did she mean by that? She felt cornered, so when it came to marriage, her answer was, wait, but wait for what? And for how long? I downed my glass of whiskey in one go, the burn in my throat, doing nothing to quell the questions rising inside me. Veronica turned away, starting a conversation with a woman next to her. The sharp, tense line of her jaw told me she was still furious. Was I just her walking wallet? Her ticket to a certain lifestyle? No, that couldn't be it, could it? In that moment, watching her perfect profile, she felt like a stranger. For 3 years, I thought our relationship was solid, that this was all leading somewhere real. Was it possible? It was all in my head. After the reception, I drove her home. The silence in the car was suffocating. I pulled up to her high-rise in Soho. As she reached for the door handle, I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed her wrist. Ronnie. My voice was hoarse. About earlier. Earlier was humiliating, Ethan. She yanked her hand away, her tone brittle. Don't ever talk like that in front of people again. It makes me sound desperate to get married. Marriage is a huge deal. Can you please stop being so childish about it? Childish. The future I had been seriously planning was childish. To her, I stared at her, searching her face for any sign that she was just angry, just lashing out. But there was nothing, only cold, hard impatience. So you don't want to get married? I asked, the question that was hanging between us like a guillotine. I didn't say that. I said I need time. She stressed. My career is just taking off. There's so many things I still want to do. Can you stop pressuring me? I'm not pressuring you. I just enough. She cut me off, shoving the car door open. I'm exhausted. I don't want to talk about this anymore. You need to go home and think about what you've done. And with that, she was out of the car. The sharp click of her heels on the pavement sounded final, each step a hammer blow to my heart. I sat there in the driver's seat, watching her disappear into the lobby. She didn't wait for me to walk her up, didn't even glance back. And suddenly, this whole scene felt terrifyingly familiar. After that night, Veronica and I entered a cold war. Or more accurately, she put me on ice. Texts were answered. Hours later, calls went straight to voicemail. When she did pick up, her voice was flat, distant, and she'd find an excuse to hang up within minutes. I tried to give her space to have a calm conversation, but she refused to discuss anything related to the future or marriage. The words were taboo. She kept repeating that she needed space and time, but she never defined how much or what. She was so hesitant. About a week later, she sent me a text out of the blue. It was simple. A few of my girls are throwing me the bachelorette party. Not coming home tonight. Bachelor party. I stared at the words, the irony burning a hole in my screen. We hadn't even set a date. We were in the middle of a fight. What kind of bachelor party was this? I texted back. What are you talking about? Where is it? Who's going to be there? Her reply was instant, laced with a deliberate, dismissive annoyance. It's just a girls' night, a chance to blow off some steam. Why are you interrogating me? You don't know them anyway. It's starting, gotta go. My gut screamed that something was wrong. This wasn't just wrong. This was a 5-alarm fire. Was she insulting my intelligence? No. I had to know what was going on. I called one of her close friends, someone I was on decent terms with. I kept my tone casual. Hey, I hear you guys are throwing a party for Ronnie tonight. Were you celebrating? There was a pause on the other end of party. What are you talking about? She never said anything. I thought you two were fighting. She's barely been in touch. My heart sank into my stomach. A terrible suspicion began to take shape. I suddenly remembered a name. A guy from her college. Someone she'd once openly admitted she had a major crush on. The one who almost became her boyfriend. The one that got away, Dylan Vance. A few months ago, I'd heard he was back in the States, after a long stint abroad. As the pieces clicked into place, a bitter, humorless smile touched my lips. I'm really not a patient man. This kind of cliché high school level deception. I was going to be the star of my own tragic comedy. I didn't even have to dig deep. I just got in my car and drove to the neighborhood Dylan Vance lived in. I didn't know his exact address, but Veronica had once mentioned the luxury condo building he'd moved into, over in Chelsea. 10 o'clock 11. Midnight. I sat in my car across the street, feeling like an idiot, waiting. I had to see this for myself. Around 1 a.m., a familiar Porsche pulled up to the front of the building. It was the one I bought her. Using the car I gave her to meet up with her old flame. Wow, just wow. The driver's side door opened, and Veronica stepped out. She was wearing a sexy, little slip dress under a light jacket. Her makeup heavier, more dramatic than usual. She was laughing. The passenger door opened, and a tall man in a casual blazer walked around the front of the car and smoothly wrapped an arm around her waist. It was Dylan. I'd seen him 1,000 times in her old college photos. Veronica didn't pull away. She leaned into his embrace, tilting her head back to laugh at something he said. They looked intimate. Easy. He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. I just sat there in my car and watched them. They walked arm in arm into the building, disappearing from my sight. And I was the outsider, the punchline to a joke I didn't even know I was a part of, witnessing my girlfriend celebrate her bachelorette party with someone else. I had to do something. When things go wrong, you call in the big guns. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father. Hey Dad, I got cheated on. An explosion of rage erupted from the other end of the line. What the hell? You little bastard, it's the middle of the night. You're not seriously calling me with this crap, are you? I calmly recounted the entire story. By the end, my father was seething. Son of bitch. They have a nerve to screw with my son. They've forgotten how I built this company from nothing. He paused. Son, you want to make them disappear? No, wait, the company's in a delicate phase with the IPO. Silence then. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. I just ran a background check. The kid from the Vance family. I can ruin them legally. It'll be cleaner. Hearing those words from the old man, I just said good and hung up. As long as it was handled, the details didn't matter. I didn't sleep all night. I sat in my study, the ashtray overflowing with cigarette. But I waited for an explanation. Or more likely, waited to see what kind of lie she'd spin. She didn't get home until noon the next day. Her face was pale with a hangover, but her eyes had a strange, satisfied glow. When she saw me sitting on the living room couch, she froze, a flicker of guilt crossing her face, before being replaced by a defiant arrogance. What are you doing here? She asked, her tone as casual as if nothing had happened. Did you have fun last night? I watched her. It was whatever. Just a bunch of us girls got drunk and crashed at a hotel. She slipped off her heels, the lie rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. A laugh escaped my lips, low and hollow. Right. People laugh when things are so utterly absurd. There's no other possible reaction. This was unbelievable. She looked at me, confused by my reaction. What are you laughing at? Nothing. I stopped laughing and stood up, my gaze sweeping over her calmly. I just realized there's no point in waiting anymore. She frowned, not getting it. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, looking her dead in the eye. Each word perfectly clear, that we're done. Veronica, she was stunned. Her face went slack with disbelief, as if the idea of me breaking up with her was completely alien. Ethan, are you insane because of last night? I told you it was a girls' night, was it? I walked to the window, looking down at the Porsche parked on the street below. Do I need to pull the security footage from Dylan Vance's building to see which one of your girlfriends had his arm around your waist? The same one who kissed you before you went inside. The color drained from Veronica's face. Her lips trembled. She was speechless. It was the pathetic, deer-in-the-headlights look of someone caught in a lie they never thought would be exposed. She opened her mouth to argue, but I was already done listening. She never wanted to marry me. Not only that, but in the middle of a fight, she could effortlessly fall into another man's arms and lie about it, without a second thought, trampling on 3 years of our lives. Looking at Veronica's ghost-white face, her eyes still wide with the shock of being exposed, a thought crossed my mind. When your heart turns to ice, you really don't feel pain anymore. Just a numb, crystal clear lucidity. Okay, that's a lie. I wasn't feeling lucid and profound. I was just so unbelievably done with this entire situation. But I figured that's what I was supposed to be feeling. It's what they always write in the books. Right, Ethan? You followed me. She stammered, trying to turn the tables. Her voice was sharp, but it couldn't hide the fact that she had nothing left. Followed you. I gave a cold, dismissive smirk. I don't have that kind of time. Let's just say I was in a neighborhood and caught a pretty interesting show. I walked into my study and came back with a manila folder I prepared earlier, holding it out to her. What's this? She added suspiciously, not taking it. The things you kept here. The deed to the condo I bought you. The keys to the Porsche. An itemized list of the jewelry, with their purchase receipts. My voice was as flat and detached as if I were closing a business deal. Check it. Sign the release form. The car's already here. I'll have my lawyer handle the transfer of the condo deed immediately. Veronica was completely floored. She stared at me as if she'd never really seen me before. She probably expected me to yell, to scream, to demand answers about Dylan, to beg her to stay. She never expected this. Calm, efficient, and utterly final. You're breaking up with me just like that. Because of one night. Her voice trembled, still unable to process it. Ethan, let me explain. I was drunk, and Dylan. Don't bother. I cut her off, my voice wavering. It doesn't matter what happened last night, or what didn't happen. What matters is that you chose to lie to me, to use a bachelorette party as a cover siam. That's all I need to know. I placed the folder on a console table by the door. Veronica, let's make this a clean break. I gave you all those things willingly. It was my mistake for not seeing you for who you really are. I played the game and I lost. I accept that. But as of this moment, we are completely, totally done. Without another look at her, I took out my phone and walked onto the balcony. From behind me, I heard her voice choked with tears. Ethan, you can't do this to me. 3 years of our lives. And you can just throw it all away. You never loved me. Throw it away. Who was the one who threw it away? I didn't turn around. I wasn't going to waste my breath arguing. I dialed a number, my voice shifting back to its usual calm, decisive tone, as if the previous conversation had been about nothing more than a minor scheduling change. Ms. Jacobs, please inform the event planners. The wedding scheduled for next month is proceeding as planned. Ms. Jacobs, my executive assistant, was clearly taken aback. She confirmed cautiously. Mr. Hayes, you mean the wedding with Ms. Lake is back on? She agreed. The bride has changed, I said, looking out at the endless river of traffic below. My voice held no trace of doubt. The new bride is Isabella Lake. A plot twist. They forgot who they were dealing with. I'm not some lovesick puppy you can just kick around. My father always taught me to have a backup plan. And honestly, this just felt right. Miss Isabella Lake. Miss Jacobs's voice was filled with disbelief, but her professionalism kicked in instantly. Yes, Mr. Hayes. I'll get right on it. All arrangements will be made to the highest possible standard to ensure everything is perfect. Good. I hung up. When I turned around, Veronica was standing in the middle of the living room, pale as a sheet. She had heard every word. Her eyes were wide with horror, as if she'd just heard the most absurd thing in the world. What did you say? Her voice was a high-pitched shriek. The wedding is on with Isabella, my sister. Ethan, are you out of her goddamn mind? Is this some kind of sick joke? I don't make jokes like this. I looked at her calmly. The wedding will happen on schedule. The only thing that's changed is the bride. Why Isabella? When did you and her? She lunged at me, trying to grab my arm, her eyes burning with a toxic mix of betrayal, rage, and confusion. Were you two screwing around behind my back this whole time? Ethan, you bastard. I sidestepped her, avoiding her touch. What's between me and Isabella is a hell of a lot cleaner than you think, I said, and for the first time a sliver of pity entered my voice. Not for her, but for the ridiculous waste of the last 3 years. At the very least, she wouldn't be sneaking around with another man all night, while pretending to be at her own bachelorette party. Veronica looked like she'd been punched in the gut. She staggered back, the last bit of color draining from her face. As for Wyeth's Isabella, the first paused, an image flashing in my mind. A gentle face, clear eyes that always held a hint of shyness, and a quiet, constant warmth. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears started streaming down her cheeks, tears of regret, anger, or loss, I couldn't tell. I didn't care. I grabbed my jacket and keys from the couch, walked past her, and headed for the door. Ethan, you can't do this to me. I don't agree. I'm still your girlfriend. My hand was on the doorknob. I paused for a beat, but didn't look back. You were, I said, but not anymore, Veronica. I wish you and your ghost of boyfriends passed a long and happy life together. Then I opened the door and walked out without a second thought. The decision to marry Isabella wasn't some spur-of-the-moment act of revenge. It was only after, standing in the ruins of my relationship, that I could finally see clearly who had been there all along, quietly deserving to be cherished. Okay, that's not entirely true, but you have to believe me. I really did see Isabella as a little sister. Isabella is Veronica's half-sister, 2 years younger. Where Veronica was all dazzling, sharp-edged beauty, Isabella was the spitting image of her gentle mother. Soft features, a quiet demeanor, like an orchid that needed careful tending. Because of their family dynamic, she'd spent her life in Veronica's shadow, making her a bit timid and reserved. But her eyes were always sincere. Over the past 3 years, I'd seen her fairly often. Family dinners, occasional shopping trips, where I was roped into carrying bags, or when Veronica was in a mood and sent Isabella to drop off a file I'd left behind. She was always quiet, murmuring a soft, "Hi, Ethan," before looking down at her shoes, rarely starting a conversation. But I felt her gaze on me. Whenever I'd catch her looking, she'd startle like a frightened deer and quickly look away, the tips of her ears turning pink. Once I helped Veronica's parents out of a tight financial spot. Her family threw a dinner to thank me. Veronica bailed for a last-minute casting call, but Isabella was there the whole time, quietly making sure my plate was full. My glass was never empty, just listening to the adults talk with a small, sweet smile. On the drive home, she said in a small voice, "Thank you, Ethan." Dad said, "The family would have been in real trouble without you." "Happy to help," I said with a smile. "Don't worry about it." After a moment of silence, she said very seriously, "My sister is so lucky to have you." I took it as a polite compliment. I'm the lucky one to have her. But she just shook her head softly, her voice barely a whisper, as if talking to herself. No, if she was truly lucky, she would know how to appreciate it. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I even thought, wow, this girl has some seriously advanced passive-aggressive skills. Another time, after a huge fight with Veronica, I was nursing a whiskey in my usual spot, deep in a foul mood. Through a drunken haze, I saw a familiar figure anxiously scanning the crowd. It was Isabella. She was in a simple t-shirt and jeans. No makeup, completely out of place in the trendy cocktail lounge. Ethan, she breathed a sigh of relief when she found me, her eyes filled with worry. "Ronnie called me. She said you weren't answering your phone, and she was worried." "Are you okay?" I let out a bitter laugh. Worried? Worried? I might die before I could buy the new Birkin bag. You mean? Isabella bit her lip and sat down next to me. She didn't try to defend her sister. She just said softly, "You should drink less. It's bad for you." She sat with me in silence that night, until I sobered up, then called an Uber to take me home. She struggled to get me onto the couch, brought me a glass of water, and wiped my face with a cool damp towel. Through my drunken fog, I grabbed her wrist. Why, I slurred. Why are you so good to her? She treats you like crap. I'd seen it myself. The casual condescension. The way Veronica ordered her around. Isabella's hand stiffened. But she didn't pull away. Because she's my sister, she whispered. And because she's good to you. That's all that matters. Only now did I realize that Veronica hadn't been worried about me at all. That night, she had a date with Dylan and couldn't be bothered. So she sent Isabella to babysit me, so I wouldn't cause any trouble. I knew it all along, really. Isabella's lingering glances, her cautious displays of concern, her whispered words. They were a confession she never spoke aloud. I had just been too busy chasing the brilliant, thorny rose to notice the gentle flower, blooming quietly in the shade. I'm a man with looks and money. I never thought I could fail. Now jolted awake by betrayal. She was the first person I thought of. The girl who was always there standing in the corner, never asking for anything. After deciding to switch the bride, she was the first person I called. I asked her to meet me at a quiet cafe in the village. She arrived in a pale blue dress, looking anxious and confused, clearly wondering why I'd asked to see her alone. Ethan, is everything okay with Veronica? She asked as she sat down, her hands nervously clutching her cup. I looked her straight in the eye. Isabella, your sister, and I broke up. Her eyes widened in shock. Why you guys were? The reasons don't matter anymore. I cut in, my gaze steady. What matters is that I have a wedding in 1 month. And I have no intention of canceling it. She looked even more lost. But Ronnie, the bride, has been changed. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of gravity I'd never felt before. Isabella, will you marry me? Clink. The small spoon in her hand dropped onto the saucer. With a sharp sound, she froze, as if I'd cast a spell on her. Her eyes were huge, her face flushing a deep crimson, before turning deathly pale. Ethan, are you joking? Her voice was shaking so badly, she could barely form the words. That's not funny. I'm not joking. I reached across the table and covered her small, trembling, ice-cold hand with mine. I've never been more serious. Isabella, I know this is sudden and I know it's not fair to you, but I know what I'm doing. I don't want to lose you. I saw tears welling up in her eyes and pressed on. I know the situation with your sister makes this difficult. I'm not asking for an answer right now. You can go home and think about it. If you say yes, the wedding proceeds as planned. If you say no, I will respect your decision and handle all the fallout. I won't let you or your family be embarrassed. A tear finally escaped and rolled down her cheek. She snatched her hand back, covering her mouth as her shoulders started to shake. Why me? She choked out. Because when I couldn't see clearly, you were the only one quietly watching over me. My voice was low and sincere. Because when I needed someone, you were always there. Isabella, give me a chance. Give yourself a chance, please. She didn't answer right away, just kept her head down, crying silently. I didn't push, just waited. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she looked up, her face tear-streaked, but her eyes shining with a strange new light. Her voice was soft, but filled with a powerful certainty. Ethan, I've had a crush on you since I was 16. The first time I ever saw you at our house. But you were my sister's boyfriend. My heart gave a jolt. Oh my God, this is what it was supposed to feel like. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help it. She sniffled, the tears coming faster now. I never, ever wanted to take anything from her. But why couldn't she see how amazing you are? She was crying like a lost child, full of hurt and helplessness. I handed her my handkerchief. So is that a yes? I asked gently. She took the handkerchief, wiped her eyes, and gave a sharp, decisive nod. Though she was still sobbing, her gaze was bright and unwavering. Yes, she said. Ethan Hayes, I'll marry you. Chapter 5. The news that Isabella and I were getting married hit our social circle like a bomb. Everyone was stunned. No one could have imagined such a dramatic, soap opera-worthy plot twist. Veronica, predictably, had the most extreme reaction. First came disbelief, then explosive rage, and finally a complete and total meltdown. She blew up my phone, with calls and texts, cycling through a dizzying range of emotions. Ethan, you can't do this to me. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I was drunk that night. Dylan took advantage of me. I love you, Ethan. Please just give me one more chance. I'll marry you right now. Don't marry Isabella. She's nothing compared to me. She doesn't deserve you. Ethan, can we please just meet? We need to talk this out face to face. How can you be so cruel? I blocked her number. Her messages went unread. There are some lines you just don't cross. Betrayal is betrayal. A lie is a lie, no matter how you try to paint over it later. The crack is always there. She even went after Isabella, trying to bully her into backing out. But this time, the timid, quiet Isabella showed a spine of steel. According to their housekeeper, Veronica stormed into Isabella's room, screaming at her to call off the wedding, even trying to slap her. But Isabella moved out of the way and looked her hysterical sister in the eye. You threw him away first. Veronica, she said, her voice calm but firm. Now he's my fiancé. The wedding is not being canceled. I'm going to marry him. Veronica almost fainted from rage, calling Isabella a backstabber, a user, an opportunist. Isabella's reply was simple and devastating, compared to someone who uses a bachelorette party as an excuse to spend the night with another man. I think my feelings are at the very least honest. That shut Veronica up for good. Her parents, though bewildered by the turn of events, couldn't say much. After learning about Veronica's behavior, faced with my unyielding stance, and the power disparity between our families, they reluctantly accepted the new reality. The wedding preparations moved forward. At lightning speed, I pulled out all the stops, determined to make it the most lavish, spectacular event the city had ever seen. I wanted everyone to know that Isabella Lake was my cherished wife, not a consolation prize. The dress, the jewelry, the venue, the reception, everything was top tier. The press had a field day, with gossip columns buzzing about the sudden swap of brides, Veronica's public humiliation, and Isabella's incredible luck. Through it all, Isabella was a rock. She was nervous, but she was also glowing, a shy, happy blush constantly on her cheeks. Seeing her in her wedding gown for the first time, watching her eyes light up as she held the invitations, it confirmed that this was the best decision I had ever made. She gave me the emotional validation I never knew I was missing. The wedding day was a spectacle. The cathedral was packed with New York's elite. Flowers cascaded from every surface, and the music was breathtaking. I stood at the altar waiting for my bride, when the door swung open, and Isabella appeared on her father's arm. A hush fell over the entire church. She was radiant in a custom French couture gown, her face veiled, her steps hesitant but sure. Through the delicate lace, I could see her eyes fixed on me, filled with a mixture of love, joy, and dreamlike disbelief. I held out my hand, and she placed hers in mine. It was cool to the touch, but it grounded me completely. We exchanged vows. We exchanged rings, and the minister announced that I could kiss my bride. I lifted her veil, saw the tears shimmering in her eyes, and lowered my head to kiss her. It was a soft, gentle kiss that held the weight of a lifelong promise. The church erupted in thunderous applause. Amid the celebration, my eyes caught a dark figure, standing in a very back pew. It was Veronica. She was wearing a severe black dress, a stark contrast to the joyous atmosphere. She wasn't clapping. She was just staring at us, her face a pale mask of shock, jealousy, regret, and a terrifying, frantic despair. It looked like she wanted to rush the altar, but a security guard, quick on the uptake, was already moving to block her path. I gave her a single, dismissive glance, before turning my full attention back to the woman, who is now my wife. Her own tears were falling now, but they were tears of happiness. Ethan, she whispered. It's husband now. I corrected her with a smile, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. A blush spread across her face. She looked down, shy but clear. Husband. In that moment, a feeling of profound contentment washed over me, filling a space I never knew was empty. The ceremony was followed by a grand reception. Isabella and I made our way from table to table, accepting congratulations. I didn't care how many were sincere. On the surface, it was a picture of perfect harmony, until we reached my friend's section, and an unwelcome guest stepped forward, glass in hand. It was Dylan Vance. He had a slick, insincere smile on his face. His eyes darted between me and Isabella before settling on her. His tone was dripping with condescending pity. Congratulations, Ethan. Quite the surprise. Switching the bride at the last minute. And Isabella, you were one lucky girl, inheriting such a magnificent wedding. The implication was clear, and the provocation was intentional. He was suggesting she was picking up Veronica's sloppy seconds. The tables nearby fell silent. The air grew thick with tension. Isabella's face paled, and her grip on her champagne flute tightened. I wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her closer to my side. I met Dylan's gaze, with a look of utter boredom, as if he were a particularly uninteresting insect. "I'm surprised to see you here, Vance," I said, my voice dangerously smooth. "I figured you'd be busy consoling someone else, who's having a very bad day." His smile faltered. I continued, my voice just loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "As for luck, you don't need to worry about my wife. Marrying Isabella is the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me. You, on the other hand, seem to have a particular fascination with things that belong, or used to belong to other people." My words were a direct hit, stripping away his suave facade and exposing the pathetic man underneath. The color rose in Dylan's face. He was clearly not expecting such a public and brutal takedown. He opened his mouth to retort, but he had nothing. I was already done with him. My father will handle him, I thought. I raised my glass to him. "And to our friends, thank you all for coming to celebrate with Isabella and me today," I announced. "We're so grateful to have you here. My wife and I would like to propose a toast with that." I drained my glass. The spell was broken. Everyone raised their glasses in response. "Congratulations, Ithanto, the happy couple, to a long and happy life together." The sound of celebration drowned out the awkwardness, leaving Dylan standing alone, invisible and utterly humiliated. He mumbled an excuse and scurried away. I never looked at him again. A pathetic bottom feeder. Like him wasn't worth a second of my time. On my wedding day, my world had narrowed to the woman beside me. She was looking up at me, her eyes shining with absolute trust and adoration. My swift and merciless defense of her honor had erased any trace of her earlier fear. I leaned down and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. "Don't worry," I whispered. "I've got you," she nodded fiercely, her face breaking into a radiant, relieved smile. After the reception, Isabella and I went home to our new penthouse. The frantic energy of the day gave way to a quiet, intimate stillness. Isabella still seemed to be in a daze. She sat on the edge of our bed, looking at the celebratory decorations around the room. "It feels like a dream," she whispered. "Ethan, am I really married to you?" I sat down next to her and took her hand. "It's not a dream, and you need to start calling me by my proper title, Mrs. Hayes." She blushed, a smile she couldn't contain spreading across her face. "Husband, that's better." I pulled her into my arms. She rested against my chest for a moment, before asking softly, "Will you ever regret this? Choosing me because Veronica?" I cut her off, tilting her chin up so she was looking me in the eye. "Never. Veronica is the past the moment she chose to betray me. She was out of my life for good. I want someone who loves me, who trusts me, someone I could cherish. That person is you." Isabella the first looked at her, making a solemn vow. "Our beginning might have been unconventional, but I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that you made the right choice today." Her eyes welled up with tears again, this time from pure emotion. She nodded hard. "I believe you, husband." She wrapped her arms around my neck and gave me a kiss. It was hesitant and unsure, but it was the most honest kiss I had ever received. The moonlight streamed through the window, blanketing us in its soft glow. I knew there would still be aftershocks from the drama with Veronica, but none of it mattered anymore. I had the person I was always meant to have, and we were starting our real life. Veronica's bitter regret and Dylan's pathetic provocations were nothing more than background noise, not even worthy of my attention. Power and wealth gave me the freedom to make choices, but it was a moment of stark clarity that had led me to the person I was meant to be with. The woman in my arms drifted off to sleep, a sweet smile on her lips. I kissed the top of her head and held her tighter. Outside, the sky was clear, the stars bright. It was a sign that tomorrow would be a beautiful day. Our beautiful day was just beginning. Married life was peaceful and warm. Isabella's gentle nature turned our penthouse into a true home, a sanctuary I had never known before. I focused on my work, but I also savored the simple joys of our new life together. As for Veronica and her one that got away, they faded from my world completely. About 6 months later, after a routine business update, Ms. Jacobs mentioned calmly, "Mr. Hayes, Vance Capital officially filed for bankruptcy and began liquidation yesterday." I didn't even look up for the documents I was signing. Noted I, Dylan's family business, which had looked impressive on the surface, had been a house of cards for years. All it took was a few strategic pushes. at its weakest points, to accelerate the inevitable collapse. My father didn't even have to get his hands dirty. A few whispered suggestions in the right ears were enough for his allies to cut off all of Vance Capital's funding and partnerships. That was the laughably small price Dylan paid for his arrogance. A week later, a small article appeared in the back of the New York Post. Vance was killed late last night after drunkenly stumbling onto the freeway and being struck by a vehicle. The police had ruled out foul play and deemed it a tragic accident. I was reading the news on my tablet while having breakfast with Isabella. She must have seen the headline over my shoulder. The hand holding her spoon paused, and she glanced at me with a complicated expression. I put down the tablet and placed a piece of bacon on her plate. My voice was even. Don't read the news at the table. It's bad for your digestion. Okay, she said meekly, looking back down at her plate. She didn't ask another question. She was a smart girl. She knew what not to ask. Besides, Dylan Vance was a complete stranger to us now. His end was his own doing. I knew that when Veronica heard the news, she would likely shatter completely. She had lost her fiancé, her lavish lifestyle, and now the tragic love she had sacrificed everything for had been extinguished in a most brutal way imaginable. But what did any of that have to do with me? I picked up my napkin and gently dabbed a small smudge of jam from the corner of Isabella's mouth. She looked up at me and smiled, her eyes full of love and contentment.